Hello, in today's video we're going to show you how to properly set up your pressure pot and your pressure gun. One of the most common problems that we see out in the field when setting up a pressure pot is the finisher is putting either too much material on or too little material at the gun. What happens if you have too little material coming out of the front of your gun and a lot of air? What you're going to have is a very dry spray. If you have too much material coming out of the front of the gun and not enough air, the thing you're going to run into is orange peel. Those are the two most common things you're going to run into. So we're going to help prevent that by showing you how to properly set this up. First thing we're going to do is go over the pressure pot, some of the controls, the regulators. And we're going to cover the gun. On your pressure pot, typically it will come with two regulators. This is the best way to get your pressure pot. If you do not have a second regulator, which is your atomizing air regulator, I recommend you get one at the bottom of the gun. This is very important, especially when spraying fine finish. That way you know exactly how much air pressure you have going to the gun. Your first regulator is always going to be your pressure pot regulator, your fluid regulator. This is going to control how much material is going to come to the front of the gun. Your second regulator is going to be your atomizing air regulator. Okay, this is going to be very important because this is going to tell you how much air you have at the gun. Okay, when dealing with HVLP, it's very important to have the right amount of air at the air cap. All HVLP air caps are marked with a maximum PSI. This is a Lynx 300 series spray gun. It says 45 PSI max pressure. All that's saying is that if you go over that 45 pounds on this regulator going to this gun, you're going to end up with over 10 PSI, which is not HVLP. You want to stay under that 45 PSI. A couple other real quick controls on your tank. You have a pressure release valve, and it is very marked, air release valve. This is to make sure that you release all the air, especially when you're done with the material, going to fill your material up on an empty pot. This pop-off valve, it's called an air safety valve. These are preset at the factory to about 70 PSI. The tank is at 80. This is set at 70 at the factory and will pop off. You should not ever be that high on fluid pressure. There's just no possible reason that you should ever be that high. Most materials you're going to be spraying are about 3 to 5 pounds. Maybe a thicker primer or an adhesive, you're going to be more at about maybe 10, 15, max 20. I have seen some situations that you do go over. Okay, it's very rare. Okay. As we get ready to set up this pressure pot, one of the first things we're going to do is make sure that your inline air is set very high. Okay, it doesn't matter how high this is. I get a lot of calls as people say, well, I've got 150 pounds coming in. That's fine. Everything is going to be controlled at these regulators. Okay, so first of all, we're going to make sure this is nice and set, and we're going to make sure it's on. Okay, we want to make sure that you have air going all the way through your pressure pot system. Before we get to the final setup, we're going to go ahead and show you the three controls on the gun because they're very important. The first control is your air control at the bottom of the gun. All this is just controls the air going to the gun. Okay. It's not a regulator. Okay. You can't regulate your air pressure going to this. All you're going to do is cut off CFM, which is very important to a gun, and PSI. So if you close this off, you're not going to get any pressure, especially dealing with HVLP spray guns. If you're using an HVLP spray gun, you're just going to cut off the amount of CFM that gets to the front of the gun. Your second control is going to be your fluid control knob. This controls how much the needle is going to move back. Okay, if you have it closed all the way, you're not going to get any trigger pull because your needle's not going to move the front of the gun. Now, if you go all the way out, you're going to get maximum flow. Okay, at least have this halfway out or not, or less, unless you are doing a huge piece or if you're doing any type of feather. Your last control that we're going to cover is going to be your fan control or your side port control. All this does is if you crank it all the way in, you're going to get a very small fan pattern, a round pattern, probably about 3/4 inches from about 6 to 8 inches away. As you open that up, you're going to open up that pattern. You're going to get a full on pattern all the way open. Okay, in which from 6 to 8 inches, you're going to get about anywhere from a 12 to a 10 to 12 inch pattern with this spray gun. Now that we covered that, first thing we're going to do, and the only time you're going to control or close this air control valve is when you're setting up the pressure pot. And we're going to close this, make sure everything's hooked up, and we're going to add our fluid pressure to the tank. Now, because we are using a very thin material, you're going to be very low, and I'm talking 2-3 pounds. With this closed, what you're going to get out of the front of the gun is just material pressure. You see that? And I don't know if you can see that real clear. Let's move it up here. You're just getting about a 2-foot stream before it breaks. That is ideal. Okay. If you have it shooting across the room, like I said before, what you're going to get when you add your air, you're not going to have enough air to atomize that. When you get all that material pressure, you're going to get orange peel. Okay. Because you're not atomizing. You can't keep up with that material flow that's flowing all the way across the room. If you don't have enough where it's just dripping out the tip, especially with your thicker materials, what's going to happen is you're going to get a very dry spray because there's no material. You also won't get any fan control. Okay, those are the most two common problems that we see. So now that we got our 2-foot stream of material set up, it's ideal. Okay, now we're about 2 pounds on the pressure pot. I know you can't see that, but that's where we're at. This is going to change throughout the day, especially if your material's been sitting on the floor. It's been a cool night during the winter, or even the fall or spring. You got those cool nights and your hot days. In the morning, you may have to crank your material pressure up. But in the afternoon, after lunch, you might want to double check this again. And as you see, it's a very simple process. The reason you want to check that is because your material may change. The viscosity of the material is going to change. If it's cold, it's going to be a lot more thicker. If it's warm, it's going to be a lot more thin. Okay? So you just want that optimal 2-foot spread. Now, with this spray gun, like I said before, it's an HVLP L300H. It says 45 PSI max. Less is always better. So with this thin material, we're going to start at about 35 pounds. I'm going to open up my air control valve once again, all the way. And now I'm going to go ahead and add some air to my air regulator. Now you notice I'm going to set this with the trigger full. The reason being is because you are going to get a slight pressure drop. And the longer the hose, the more pressure drop you're going to get. Okay? So when I pull the trigger, I'm going to set it about 35 PSI with the trigger full. Now if you're running 50 foot of hose and you don't have a second regulator, I highly recommend you get a mini regulator right at the gun. Okay, go ahead and turn on the booth here. Now when you spray your test pattern, you can either spray it on a piece of scrap wood or scrap metal, depending on what you're finishing, or just make sure that you're using something scrap. Even cardboard works, because you can see how big the particles are when you're atomizing it. You just want to make sure you have a full, nice, even pattern, and that you're atomizing. That's the main thing. Okay. If you're not getting small particles, you may want to add a little more air or watch your fluid pressures. But I guarantee you, if you use a 2-foot stream test, you're not going to have any problems. Okay. We're all set with our pressures. First thing we're going to do is spray a test pattern. Okay, I'm going to start down here. See that? It's nice and full. Okay? And where it's dripping, that's just showing you that it's a nice, full, even pattern. That's exactly what you want. Okay? We're going to check for atomization now. Very good. We're getting very small droplets. I know it's a little hard for you to see, but you will, when you start setting these up yourself, you'll recognize how small those particles are versus if you didn't have enough air pressure to the gun and way too much material flow. If you have any problems whatsoever, please give our sales technical people a call at 888-820-4498, and we'll help you get this set up, walk you through the process of making sure that everything is set correctly. Have a great day. Thank you.